Greetings, ladies and gentlemen of YouTube. I'm Cipher, and this is the Devil's Advocate Debate Club. Welcome back. Today I'd like to talk to you a little bit about the idea of ideological framing and the massive impact that I think it's recently had on most of the mainstream media outlets. I'll be talking mostly about America, probably entirely about America, but if you look, I think this is definitely something you'll find happening in other countries as well, definitely in the UK. Now, there was a time, as I was growing up, and for really most of my life up until recent years, when one of the biggest differences between the main reporting agencies in America, I would say NBC, CNN, and Fox News are what we're talking about here, was the way in which they framed the stories. They would all report on basically the same events, and not just the same events, but the same facts within those events, as the facts are what they are. And then each would produce their own ideological narrative to go alongside them in the way that they portrayed those facts, in their word choices, in their narrative. I had always considered, and most of the people I knew considered, whatever side they were on, NBC to be kind of the left-leaning outlet, CNN to be the fairly objective middle, with perhaps commentators back in the day who leaned both ways, and with Fox being solidly ideologically on the right. And I grew up being taught and believing that Fox had the biggest bias. This, I believe, may have even been the case, as Fox News was originally started, as I understand it, to fill a gap in the market for conservative media, and would have thus been intentionally pushed to the right. Recently, however, framing has become more extreme, to the point that it's no longer just ideological framing, which is the difference between these outlets. CNN has moved maybe farther to the left than NBC, leaving them as the left of center, but potentially most moderate in some ways outlet, with Fox still ideologically leaning to the right. However, they no longer, as of the last couple of years, report on the same stories or the same facts within those stories. In my experience recently, especially CNN has been, lying and pushing things which aren't just ideologically, narratively twisted to fit what they believe, but are actually not true, while at the same time spending huge amounts of time talking about Trump or Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez's most recent tweet. NBC does this as well. Fox has continued with their ideological narrative pushing to the right, but has also continued reporting on the news and the facts just with that narrative. This has led CNN and NBC to collapse in upon themselves, as people who are actually looking for the news go elsewhere, many of them to Fox News. Now, the numbers back this up empirically. If you go look at them, it's obvious, but it was funny to me when I came up with my own anecdotal story. A pair of people close to me who probably don't want to be mentioned in my videos by name, who are both definitely to the left of where I am on the political spectrum, and one of them is fairly far to the left. I would even consider her to have Trump derangement syndrome to a degree. Both had quite some time ago slowed down and recently basically stopped watching CNN and NBC and had been poisoned against the idea of Fox News for decades. So they were struggling to find another news source, and while I tried to convince them to go to a few independent journalists that I like, at least to give them a chance, eventually just started watching Fox News. Neither of them like the framing. That hasn't changed. But they like that they can actually go and find reporting on, say, policy decisions being made at the White House, as opposed to the most recent, potentially racially insensitive thing tweeted by Trump, or Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez's recent support of minor domestic terrorism. And yes, she is now supporting domestic terrorists through charity. So she is basically using her clout in Congress to get monetary support to terrorists. This sounds extreme, but as big of a problem as Antifa could be for the streets of, say, Portland, nationwide sweeping policy decisions are more important. But you see CNN and NBC spending less and less time on them and reporting over and over on the same few known details of, say, the Russia investigation. I'll have to go see if I can find the clip, but Rachel Maddow basically had, I think it was 16 segments that were between 5 and 10 minutes long, all of which were on the same detail of the Russia investigation. And sure, maybe some people missed it the first, second, or third time, but at some point, find something else to report on. At some point, no matter how scary it is, even if it's true, you need to move on and report on the actual news. Otherwise, your ratings are just going to continue to collapse. Because reporting on the news within a certain ideological framing is fine. Everyone can understand that we have differences of opinions and that the facts as they stand might not mean the same thing to different people, even if they are the same facts. But reporting on quote-unquote different facts really just means that one side is lying. And recently, I think most people have been able to see which side that is when it comes to the mainstream media. This is less true when it comes to independent journalism. Now, there's a lot of figures who are getting lumped under the title of the intellectual dark web. And these are mostly independent journalists and academics who are willing to talk about controversial subjects. But there are quite a few people who fall into that description who have not at any point that I've seen been categorized as intellectual dark web. Most of these people are farther on the left than the people who do get classified intellectual dark web, as it's become kind of a dog whistle for, I guess, right-wing propagandists among people on the far left. That being said, what I think is the real distinction here is that members of the intellectual dark web, at least any of them that I've been able to, or that I've seen labeled as such, are people who believe in facts over feelings and in detail-based reporting on what happens in the world. They're people who, whether or not I always agree with them or whether or not they're always right, at least try to base their opinions in reality, not emotion. Now, there are people who are talked about as being on the edge of the intellectual dark web, like Shoe on Head, who I think go back and forth on this aspect at times, and would probably admit it if asked. Which is why they're considered to be on the edge of the intellectual dark web, is if you have some emotionally charged beliefs, then people will question whether you really belong there, even though it's so ill-defined. But the intellectual dark web is what the mainstream media used to be. It's a group of people who are reporting on or talking about the facts of important or at least socially conscious and current events within their own frameworks, but within the facts as portrayed for the most part. And that's why more and more people are going to sources like Tim Pool for their media. Tim, who certainly doesn't have the numbers of, say, NBC's all-day lineup of hours and hours of media, but compare his 15 minutes, or if you combine his videos, to about an hour to any of their viewership, and he stomps them. Why? Well, because they're dirty, dirty smear merchants who for several years have been lying to the public, and the public has gotten fed up with it and has started going elsewhere to find actual news. So framing can be important. It can be the difference between making people care about an important issue and making them ignore it. But lying will push your viewers away. See, people have to be pushed to watch a media outlet with framework that is the opposite of theirs. As someone in the middle, this makes it easy for me to watch media on all sides of any framework because, well, it's more interesting to me to see how different people are taking stories differently than it is to just see one perspective. But these days, we're not just seeing different perspectives. We're seeing a few different perspectives on the intellectual dark web or on Fox, pushing extreme lenses at times in how they view the story, but then we see flat-out lies from lots of other mainstream sources. And it takes me back to the Covington case. Recently there was a tweet from a Pulitzer Prize-winning author about how people should stop wearing red hats because MAGA hats are red, and people might think it might be a MAGA hat. And if you're wearing a Make America Read Again hat, stop it because you're making everyone scared. But you're not making everyone scared. The people that you're scaring are a small percentage of the population. See, not everyone on the far left intersectional crowd is scared by Trump hats. Probably about half of them, maybe 75%, and they make up about 6 to 8% of the population. So you're scaring maybe 3% of people. And personally, I think it's their problem, not yours, even if you're wearing a real MAGA hat. Also, this year I think the blue ones might be as popular as the red. I've seen quite a few of them walking around, so pretty soon are we just not going to be able to wear hats at all? Is this really just an attack on whatever baseball team has red caps? No. It's lunacy. It is someone with a position of speaking authority that gets people to listen to them, regardless of whether or not they have any actual expertise on the subject, coming out and making grand, sweeping statements to their thousands and thousands of followers that are simply not rooted in fact. When it's a Pulitzer winner, prize-winning author, it's embarrassing. When it's a journalist, it's downright disgusting. But hey, that's just my opinion. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you would like to subscribe. I will be back home in about a month and producing content, hopefully more consistently. Once I can find a slightly more secluded place to film, as I am still within earshot, I plan to do a video on mines, which is too offensive for YouTube. So make sure to find me on Mines. If you don't have a Mines account, you should get one. It doesn't work well on my phone, so I've not been as active as I would like on the site. But as soon as I get back to where I can have my laptop running more consistently, that's where I plan to spend most of my time on social media. So find me there. And as always, I'm your host, Cipher. Thanks for watching the Devil's Advocate Debate Club.